This week in the Frew Publications news, Frew has released a brand new Phantom comic, and it is titled The Manhunt by Matt Kime. Now, will Matt Kime be joining us this week? I don't know, I seriously don't know. But coming up on this week's show, Angelo Todaro is selling a piece of original Phantom cover art from a story called The Stubborn Sorcerer. bossfightstudios reveals the biggest production update for their new set of figurines yet to date. And here we go. We have an exclusive interview with Matt Kime as he sits down to talk about his stories on the Phantom and his upcoming story about the Manhunt. And the new news segment is back. It is called Did You See What I Saw This Week? 1, 2, 3, 4! In the last few weeks on Facebook in the Phantom groups, you may or may not have seen that Angelo Todaro, am I actually going to get this right? Angelo Todaro is selling a piece of original Phantom cover art from the 2017 Frew published story called The Stubborn Sorcerer. And you are now able to purchase original cover design or pages from the story itself, which is going to be amazing. And as fans, we've always seen if an artist has done a Phantom cover art or if they've done pages from a story that they've done, they either hang on to it for a little while because it's like a personal object to them, it's like a personal thing to them, and then probably in a good 10-15 years after that story gets done and is finished, then sometimes they seem to think, oh, I can probably sell this now, and oh, I don't feel that like a personal attachment to it anymore. And they look awesome, and if you would like to own a page or the original cover art from the story, they are available now by directly contacting Angelo Todaro on Facebook or emailing at studio@studiopontolinear.com. Boss Fight Studio this week has given fans the biggest scoop on their production samples in their latest set of photos from their new figurine line called Power Stars. They look fantastic, and it won't be that long until fans are able to purchase these amazing figurines. And now with this week's newest story edition from Matt Kime, he joins us to discuss the stories he has created for Frew Publications and the people he has worked with. This week on The Enthusiast, we have an extra special guest on this week, and he is the one, the only, Matt Kime. Matt Kime is the writer behind the stories like the now well-known Phantom story called The Day at the Races and his upcoming story, The Manhunt. It is going to be coming out next week and it will be fantastic. Some of the stories Matt Kime has done over the last couple of years have been very interesting, and now we're going to be getting into question number one. When you are doing your stories for the Phantom, do you base some of your stories off inspirations you have seen or are directly affecting you and feel the urge to write about something? For example, you might say something to do with poaching or a rivalry between family members and you having that experience and wanting to do something on it, or does an idea or subject come to you straight away?
Sure, good question, and thank you for having me. There's a lot of different things which I find inspiring, and I think probably the number one thing that I do draw on as inspiration is the Phantom stories that Lee Falk wrote, and also I'm a big fan of all the European stuff as well. So like I've got like probably you as well and many of your viewers, a massive collection of Phantom comics which I read and reread, I have my own little spreadsheets and documents where if I find something in a comic I find particularly interesting, or if there's an aspect of it I think that could be used for a story, I'll make notes on it. I also like to look at other databases which are available for Phantom, like the Phantom Wiki.
Yeah.
And there's another database which I'm not sure if it's a secret, if it's going to be announced soon, but I won't say too much. But there is another resource which is available, and I think that one will be announced fairly soon. But I'll give you a concrete example. The Manhunt, the story which is coming out next week, the big inspiration for that was a story that Lee Falk wrote many years ago called The Limper. And it's always been a favorite story of mine. And I wanted to write a story which had Kit and the Phantom, his father, together. I wanted them to have an opportunity to solve the problem. I wanted there to be a storyline where the Phantom is showing Kit, basically training him.
Yeah.
Because I like the idea that, Kit, when he becomes the Phantom, he's going to rely on the training that his parents have given him. So I used, the inspiration of the Limper for one part of the story. And I guess the other inspiration for that story is countless stories where the Phantom interacts with Kit and Heloise. I guess as well, like, there's other influences that come in, things that have happened in my life, or things that I've read or seen, movies, literature. I'm always on the lookout for things which inspire me.
I think that's a good thing, that you're always thinking of what can I make into something, or there's a piece that could be written into a story.
There might be something as simple as a quote, and sometimes it's a quote from fiction, sometimes it's non-fiction. Sometimes I'll read something which I find interesting and thought-provoking, and I'll think, all right, how could that get weaved into a story? I've got lots of, even on my phone, I've got like a notepad, and I've got quotes or different movies or plot lines, or just random thoughts that pop into my head, or the experiences that I hear of, like from the real world, that I think, that could be something. So, and I never think about it for, like, any other characters. It's always the Phantom. He's the first one I think of. How could this situation, how could this quote, how could this be manipulated into a Phantom story?
How could this situation or something that's happening in the real world impact on the Phantom, and how he could possibly either prevent it from happening or resolve that issue?
Yeah. And it can come at the strangest times too. I'm not sure if you know, Brad, but I'm a teacher, and occasionally teachers will have to sit and supervise exams, practice exams, maybe year 10 or 11 exams.
Yeah.
And often they're subjects that you don't even teach. And so I'll open up the exam while the kids are doing it. I'm supervising them while they're doing the exam, but I'll look at the questions. And once I was reading through questions at a year 11 humanities or year 10 humanities class, there was questions about sanitation and how important it is in third world countries. And I thought, the Phantom, he has resources. He has money. Like, he's one of the richest men in the world. And I thought, in addition to going out and, roughing roughnecks and fighting crime, what sort of initiatives could he spearhead in Bengala? How could he use his wealth? And so that's another idea, which it hasn't turned into anything yet, but that's just an example of how an everyday thing, I'll run my purple glasses over it, my Phantom glasses, and think, how could this become a story? Even something as boring as sanitation.
Like, if a person had to do a story on sanitation, it would be something to do with the jungle or something.
Exactly.
I feel like when people in stories create a story around health and vaccines and all that sort of stuff, with a Phantom, I think it's more focused around in the jungle parts, because they may or may not have access to that sort of stuff. But you've got Dr. Axel's hospital now, so it could possibly, if you had to make a story about that sort of thing, then at some way you could possibly throw in Dr. Axel's hospital or something like that.
Also, I'm very much inspired by the characters themselves. You know, my stories often feature Diana fairly prominently.
Yeah.
She's my favorite Phantom character. I recently did a story called The Issue of Heloise. So that was about the Phantom and his daughter. And the one which is coming up, The Manhunt, that's mainly about the Phantom and his son, Kit. So the family life is a very important issue to me, and particularly the relationships between the family members.
I think because when you did that story on Heloise, the issue with Heloise, I very much enjoyed that story because I could relate to it, because obviously most people, they've either got a brother or they've got a sister or multiples, and at some points in time in their lives, then sometimes there's going to be an argument, or sometimes it would go somewhere else. And I related to that because a lot of times in my life, sometimes you've had an argument, or you've had you've had an argument with your brother, and I related a lot to that story because.
Thank you very much for that, for sharing that. That's what I hope for when I write those stories, that it's going to touch someone and remind them of someone. It'll resonate with them.
Yeah. Question number 2 is, in the prints that include characters, how are you able to sell characters that are syndicated like the Phantom? Have you been through anything that you needed to have permission to do with them? Because when I was at your table purchasing this sketch cover, you were talking to Nick Moles at the table on, I think, Saturday it was. You were talking to Nick Moles and you were talking about how you had, when you were making prints and stuff, you were talking about to do with the legal side of it.
Yeah, look, I'm not an expert. I'm not sure. I look at.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. You know, I think personally that prints are a way. You know, they're a good way for an artist to make some money and get a fan base. But I also think that they advertise the character as well. Yeah. And yeah, I've had my thoughts on this go backwards and forwards. You know, there've been times when I haven't been interested in doing prints, and I haven't done them, and there were times when I would make prints which were only related to my characters, which I owned entirely.
Yeah.
And I kind of spoke out against prints sometimes. I've been through phases where I haven't liked it when people have made prints, and I'm sick of seeing Spider-Man and Deadpool and big characters like that. So yeah, I'm
big dogs.
The big dogs, yeah. And then when I came in a situation to actually be working on the Phantom and to have like legitimate authorized Phantom comics produced, I started to produce Phantom prints because I guess that's sort of what I'm known for now. I can't be sure what the legality is in it, and I'll just say if I'm asked to stop, I'll stop.
Yeah,
no problem. It seems to me that from speaking to other artists and speaking to Frew that they don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I think what would be a problem though is if there was a picture which had been produced for Frew to be a print, and if I then used that and printed my own, that would be a problem, and I wouldn't do that.
That would be a problem because it would have stuff to do with copyright.
Yeah, and so you'll see the prints which I have produced. They're a limited edition. I don't reprint them over and over and over again. I haven't got hundreds of them. I print up a certain amount, and when they're all gone,
print a limited copies, like how Frew Publications does the portfolio.
the portfolio art prints and say there's 100 copies, you sell all those 100 copies, and then no more of those prints get made. Yeah.
And I don't send them off to be made into mugs or t-shirts or any other merchandise. I think that would be wrong. I think, selling them as prints is fair enough. And, you might have seen I've done lino prints as well. And,
I liked those.
Yeah, they're not mass produced. They're hand printed. So I do editions of 15 and then that's it. So yeah, I speak to other artists and I see what they do, and it seems like it's a common practice for people to do prints of the Phantom. And yeah, like the legal side of things, I guess, I'm happy enough not knowing. But if there's some reason why I or any others had to stop, we'd respect that.
Yeah, I think back in the day, if someone made it something with a character that was so big and everyone knew about it and knew him, and then wanting to basically try and take advantage of that character and try and make money off it, then they would be in the wrong and they possibly would get sued over it.
Yeah, and I have previously felt that ethically it's not the right thing to do. I've flipped on that. I haven't got a reason either.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just starting to ramble now.
I think it goes back to the saying, if it's not yours to try and experiment with, then it's may as well don't experiment with it, or you're going to cop the consequences or something like that. Question number 3 is, when you are collaborating with other creatives like Shane Foley, how do you communicate with each other? Do you have to discuss the projects or project through a Zoom call, or do you both have a mutual trust that allows you to work with other people and Shane?
Okay, so working with Shane specifically, there is a massive mutual respect there. And I feel the way that we came together, it was a bit unusual. The story was, and for people that may already know this, I did the art. I wrote the story and did the art for Diana and the Heartbreakers gang. Yeah, so the one after that, Diana and the Heartbreakers gang, with Diana on the cover. And fortunately for me, it was approved by Frew. They liked it. They enjoyed it. Went off for final approval at King Features. They didn't like it. Sorry, they didn't like the art. They didn't understand why we were insisting on making the art look so dated. And the art was, my original art was very simple, very stylized. So Shane Foley was brought in. He was asked by Frew if he would go over my art and enhance it a little bit, because they knew that he had a style that would suit. And Frew ran that by me first. So I just want to make that really clear.
I think it did wonders for the story, because I also very muchly enjoyed that story. It was good. It was one of those stories where you think to yourself, this is a good piece of reading material. Like, you can sit down and say, a person can sit down in their green chair or in their chair in their living room, and they can read a story, but if it doesn't make some sort of impact on them, or if it doesn't, like, say, wow, I think if it doesn't say wow, then they're going to be left either disappointed or feeling like, is there more to the story? What could lead on to it? Like, I've only seen probably a couple of stories and a couple of covers that I do not like, and I've made myself clear about that. But I guess it goes down to the point, you sit in an armchair and you feel like this story isn't given its full potential, then you're feeling like you're a bit disappointed at the end.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of that story was, as I said, the art was rejected, and so it seemed like the story wasn't going to go ahead. Yeah. And quite a few weeks went by, and I was very disappointed, and Frew were disappointed, and they really tried to convince King Features that it would be popular and that, A Day at the Races was well received, but they were rigid. They wouldn't accept it. So Dudley contacted me and said, would I be offended if he asked Shane Foley to redo the art? And I said, no, I wouldn't be offended. I would prefer to see it published, even if the art isn't my art. I still want the story because I'm proud of the story. And I'm a fan of Shane Foley. I'd be thrilled if he considered doing it. And then Shane Foley is a real gentleman. And he messaged me, and he and I hadn't really talked before. Maybe we might have messaged each other just casually, and we were friends on Facebook. And he said, "Listen, I've been asked to do this, but I I don't want to hurt your feelings. I want to make sure that you're aware of this. I don't want to just go ahead without your permission, your consent." And I said, "Yeah, go for it. Go for it. I really want you to do it." And so he and I started to communicate. He would send me pictures. I'd give him feedback. I loved everything he did. I could see that he was really enhancing what I'd done. So the first time he and I actually spoke, like we're speaking now, is in an episode of the Chronicle Chamber where we were interviewed about that. And it was a really, really lovely experience having a chat with him because we just seemed to be on the same wavelength. We love the same things. We have the same admiration for the Phantom, and we have a deep respect for each other.
Yeah.
So I had this story which I'd been working on, which I'd been writing, which was the issue of Heloise. And almost immediately after that podcast interview, I got in contact with him and sent him the script and said, "I can't think of anyone I prefer to draw this than you. Will you do it?" And so we didn't have a Zoom conference. We just mainly, I think the only conversation we had was via email and via text message. And we just chat backwards and forwards, and he'd send pages, and I'd be over the moon, and I'd send him feedback. So yeah, we've only ever spoken once in the Zoom, but we do talk quite a bit. And whenever I see his work come out, I send him a message and congratulate him on it. And I've got other work of his, some of his Dark Nebula stuff, and I always I like to contact him. He's a really nice guy.
He's got a new story that's being published right now, and it's going to. He's the third part of it, which is called The Golden Queen, and I haven't read all of it. I haven't read the second part. I've read the first part, but his art and his inking in the black and white stories is phenomenal. And another story he did, which was it was a Scorpio series, and it was published through many, many issues of the giant-sized Phantom series, and I love that series. Like, I love the story, and I love the artworks that are in it, because it feels like he's, like, channeling his inner Kari Leopardon. It's amazing.
Yeah. And the first work of his I saw in Phantom was I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but it had characters like Jimmy Wells in it, and it had old Phantom references. And from my comics, that's exactly the sort of thing I write into. So it's a match made in heaven, really, when we work on a comic together, because we both love the Phantom, and we love the Phantom history, and we love Ray Moore and Wilson McCoy and Lee Falk. So yeah, I hope to do more work with him.
Let's hope so, because it's been a joyful experience so far. And question number 4 is, in your art of the Phantom, what do you keep in mind when drawing him, and who inspired you to draw and create things?
All right, so that's an easy question for me, and there's 4 artists who I consider the absolute best Phantom artists. And it'll be no surprise, really. Ray Moore. I think every single time I draw the Phantom, I sort of imagine it. I imagine a Ray Moore picture. That's how I see the Phantom. Not too muscular, not like a big hulky guy, more like an Olympic swimmer. Yeah. So I think if you look back at early Ray Moore depictions of the Phantom, that's how I always, in my mind's eye, how I see the Phantom. He's tall, broad-shouldered, but not too muscly, Olympic swimmer sort of character.
Question.
The Phantom, three other artists though. Cy Barry, Desai Barry obviously really recreated the Phantoms look and made the Phantoms look what it is today, like the typical Phantom look. Kari Lepinen and Hans Lindahl, because when I was a kid, they were the best, in my opinion, still are the best Phantom artists. So yeah, every single time I draw the Phantom, I have those 4 names, those 4 styles sort of going through my head. And yeah, I'm a sucker for those guys. I just love them. I think probably Hans Lindahl's my favorite.
I love, like, when I get to have a story in my hands and I'm reading it and it's got Kari Lepinen on Kari Lepinen's art in it. It's so good.
Yeah.
When you were in question number 5, when you were growing up and you decided that you loved putting pen to paper, who did you look at as inspiration in the art or art styles or people you wanted to be like?
Yeah. Well, this really overlaps with the last question.
Yeah.
Those 4 artists. I like all the different styles of all the different Phantom artists. You know, there's something in all of them I like. Another one who I like very much is Don Newton as well. George Bess.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of the modern artists as well. Outside of Phantom, there was a lot of other artists and influences I liked. But if I speak strictly about Phantom, it would be those artists I've mentioned.
Okay. Thank you for mentioning the great people that inspired the great Matt Kime. And my last question is a fun one. It's a good cracker one. And it's question number 6. What do you do when you are not doing art or making things?
I'm thinking about doing art and making things. I think I've always been, this will sound silly or embarrassing, but I've always been a daydreamer. Right from when I was little, I would just think, I would imagine. I used to just walk around thinking about stories, even when I was very little. And it was funny because when I was at school, I never really wrote any stories. I just used to daydream. I used to draw and daydream. And so now I love painting and I love drawing and I love writing stories. I'm a school teacher. I teach art, so I'm around young people all the time. And I like to encourage them to explore creativity as well. You know, I've had really wonderful experiences with older students, year 12s, helping them to create artworks in their own style, and wonderful experiences with younger students, getting them to develop and begin on their artistic, language. I have kids as well, so I like spending time with them. I love listening to music. I like reading novels. I collect comics. You know, I read them, but I also like to collect them as well. I have a big, collection of comics. I'm pretty normal in all those regards. One thing, I'm not really into sport. I've never really had any interest in sport, so I guess the sort of time that most people would put into sport, I probably put into music or drawing or reading.
Like the as the saying goes, the creative side of life.
Yeah. I just don't like sport. I like it for other people. I'm glad people enjoy it, and for some people, it's so important to them. But I've got no disrespect to anyone that loves sport. Like, go for it. If that's what you do, it's what you love. That's what you do. It's just not me in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I like walking, but that's not a sport, though.
Oh, you can see those Olympic people on the big marathons, and they're going.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm wrong. It is a sport. Walking is a sport. So there you go. I do like sport after all. There's nothing with a ball. What's the point?
unless the ball is going to come and hit your face, come and hit a person's face.
Yeah.
I think people are pretty good, because my aim in some cases is terrible, but sometimes it is on pinpoint.
Yeah. Now, another thing is like I've got kids and they love sport. You know, one is very good at soccer and he likes to go and play soccer, and he wants me to be a goalie, and of course I'll do that, or whatever it is they want to do.
Yeah.
You can't be selfish all the time. You've got to you know you've got to do your duty, I suppose. Can I ask you, Brad, what do you like to do apart from the Phantom? What are your interests?
I like reading, I like comics, and I like drawing and painting and listening to music. One of my all-time favorite bands is Van Halen, and I love Billy Idol, and I like taking photos. I like doing photography, and yeah, I love doing creative things. I like trying to, if I'm seeing something, for some reason, I'm not too sure if other people can do this, but I'll see something. If it's not in the photography way, I'll see something and I'll try and somehow make a picture out of it.
Yeah, that's creative. You've got a photographer's eye.
Yeah.
I like that song "Eruption" by Van Halen. The big long guitar solo.
Yeah. I think one of the favorite songs, I listen to him all the time, but yeah, he's good. And then when I first found out that he had passed away from cancer, it was not great. It was not great, because he was like one of the people that you'd listen to the music of his music, and it just made your day better a little bit.
And he always seemed like such a nice guy as well.
Yeah.
And even just the way he played, like he always had a big smile on his face.
Always had that dream of either going to see Van Halen or going to see what was that one? At some point I wanted to dream and go to see Billy Idol and Billy Joel and all those types of people, and yeah. Thank you, Matt Kime, for joining us this week. And if the viewers wanted to find out more about what you do, where could they find that out?
Okay, so the only social media that I have at all is my Instagram, which is Matt Kime Comics. I guess any announcements I have about conventions or new artworks or comics, they'll always go through that channel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure being interviewed by you, Brad. I'll be on this anytime you like. Okay, that's my
now
plan.
we have our latest, newest news segment. It is called "Did You See What I Saw This Week?" This week in The Phantom, we'd begun the week with the Monday and Tuesday's panels, going on to say, "Everything was so. Never forget me among mortal man, fool of a man, that you yourself saw nothing of the prophecy. I'll take devil with me," the Phantom says. "Fool, choose any path you like," the skeleton says. "Your destination will never change. The grave, Father, the grave." The Phantom wakes as anyone does when you have a nightmare. In Thursday's panel, the Phantom says, "How could every path lead to a bloody fight for my life in India? One destined to lose. Everything hinges on that rhodia bullet. All I have to do is not get shot at grave lines. How hard can that be?" The first thing I would like to say, because we started off with the Phantom finishing his chat with the pesky skeleton. And now I'm thinking, do I sense that the Phantom is being naive about his intentions of him going to rescue Savannah from Graveline's prison? Is the Phantom being naive? What do you think about the Phantom being naive? Is he not thinking of what else could happen in the story? What else could happen in the moment where he may or may not get shot? And I feel like the Phantom isn't thinking it through and is wanting to believe what he thinks is best and is pushing everything down deep depths. And as the saying goes, the stupid never forgive nor forget. The naive forgive and forget. The wise, however, forgive but do not forget. Is the Phantom being too naive and thinking about any other ways it could go down? Or as the pesky skeleton said,
"Fool, choose any path you like. Your destination will never change."
You can now follow us on our socials at Instagram at Phantom Cave Reviews and on Facebook at Phantom Cave. If you'd like to subscribe to Phantom Cave Reviews, you can. And what did you think of The Manhunt by Matt Kime? Have you read it and the past stories he has done? And as always, keep Phantom Caving, and we'll see you next week on another episode of The Enthusiast.